What if I told you that your addictions aren't really about alcohol, sugar, social media, or gambling, but about something far deeper? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, believed that addiction isn't a sign of weakness nor just a bad habit. He saw it as a desperate cry of the soul, an attempt to fill an invisible void inside us. Think about it. Why do some people fall into destructive patterns while others seem immune? Is it really just about willpower? Or is there something hidden, something we don't dare to face? Jung suggested that when we try to escape pain, we're not simply avoiding reality. We're searching for something we've lost. Maybe meaning, maybe purpose. So here's the shocking twist. Your destructive behaviors. Those midnight binges, endless scrolling, or that one drink to relax might not just be escapes. They might be silent screams for a life that feels whole. And that changes everything, because now, the real question isn't, how do I stop my addiction? It's, what am I really searching for beneath it? Take a moment. Have you ever felt that no matter how much you achieve, buy, or consume, there's still an emptiness that lingers? That's the void Jung spoke of, and when we don't face it directly, it takes control. What starts as harmless one beer after work, a little retail therapy, another scroll before bed, slowly grows roots. Before we notice, it becomes a cycle. We crave relief. We find it for a moment, but then the void returns even louder. It's not just about pleasure. It's about the aching need for transcendence, something bigger than ourselves. But here's the problem. Instead of looking inward, we often search outward. In substances, in approval, in success, and each time the void grows. Jung believed that behind every addiction lies an unspoken spiritual hunger. Not hunger for religion necessarily, but hunger for connection, wholeness, and meaning. So here's the uncomfortable question for you. What if your biggest struggle, your most destructive habit, is really a distorted path to something divine? Sounds strange, doesn't it? But think about it. How many of us chase status, money, or escape when what we're really craving is peace, simplicity, or love? This is the psychology of addiction, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. But this is only the beginning, because Jung also revealed where these cravings come from, the hidden part of ourselves we're most afraid to face. Imagine carrying around a secret version of yourself, one you never want the world to see. The side filled with anger, envy, fears, and impulses you'd rather bury. Carl Jung called this hidden self the shadow. Here's the catch: the more you try to ignore it, the stronger it becomes. And very often, it shows up as addiction. Think about it. A person who represses rage may reach for alcohol to calm down. Someone who hides deep insecurities might chase gambling, trying to feel in control for once. Another who runs from loneliness may drown themselves in social media, looking for validation with every notification. At first, these escapes look harmless. A drink to relax, a quick game, a scroll to kill time. But in reality, they are masks covering unresolved pain. Jung warned, the shadow doesn't disappear just because we deny it. It waits, it grows, and if we don't face it, it takes over in destructive ways. Picture your shadow like a figure walking right beside you. You can pretend not to see it, but it never leaves. The more you run, the darker it becomes, until it breaks through as compulsions, addictions, and self-sabotage. Here's the paradox: what we repress is exactly what we need to face. By confronting our shadow, naming our fears, admitting our hidden desires, embracing our flaws, we strip it of its destructive power. But when we refuse, addiction steps in as a distorted way to cope. Let me ask you something personal. What do you think you've been running from? Is it fear of failure? Fear of not being enough? Old wounds you'd rather forget? Jung believed addiction is not just an enemy. It's a signal that something within us is unbalanced. The craving isn't for the substance or the act, it's for wholeness. Think of a gambler who feels alive only when risking everything. Beneath the surface, that's not just about money. It's an unconscious hunger for control, power, or recognition. But because it isn't faced directly, it spirals into destructive cycles. Here's the powerful truth. When you integrate your shadow, when you shine light on the parts you hide, you transform weakness into strength. The same energy that once fueled your addiction can fuel your growth. But this takes courage. It means admitting, yes, I have darkness in me, but it's still me, and I won't let it control me anymore. Addiction, then, is not simply a habit to break, it's an opportunity. An invitation to meet the darkest parts of yourself and discover they don't have to be enemies. So let me ask you, would you dare to face your shadow? Instead of numbing it, because if you do, you unlock the first real step toward freedom. But Jung didn't stop there. He believed that beneath our addictions and shadows lies something even more dangerous and more revealing, the spiritual void. Tell me something. Have you ever achieved something you thought would finally make you happy, only to feel empty again days later? Maybe it was buying the new phone, reaching a promotion at work, or even winning someone's approval. For a moment, you felt complete, but soon after, the emptiness crept back in. That hollow feeling is what Carl Jung called the spiritual void. And in his view, this void sits at the heart of every addiction. See, Jung believed that when we disconnect from our true self, our deepest essence, we lose balance. We feel as though something is missing, though we can't explain what. That missing piece turns into a haunting emptiness we'll do almost anything to silence. And so we reach for substitutes: alcohol, shopping, gambling, scrolling, binge-eating, overworking, or endless pursuit of status. But here's the cruel trick: those substitutes never last. They patch the hole for a minute, but the void always returns stronger than before. Think of someone coming home after a stressful day. They pour a drink telling themselves it's just to relax. On the surface, that's all it looks like. But Jung would say beneath that glass of wine lies a deeper hunger, not for alcohol, but for meaning, for connection, for transcendence. And this is where so many of us get trapped. We try to fill an inner emptiness with outer solutions, but you can't fill a spiritual void with things from the outside. It's like trying to quench thirst by drinking seawater. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Let's be honest. How many times have you told yourself, if I just get this, then I'll be happy. If I just buy this, if I just get that promotion, if I just have their approval. And yet, once you get it, the satisfaction fades. Why? Because the void doesn't live out there, it lives inside. Jung saw this not as weakness, but as a misguided search for transcendence. Addiction, in his words, was a failed attempt to connect with something greater. What addicts truly crave isn't the substance, it's wholeness. Peace, a sense that life has meaning. But here's the tragedy. The more we search outside, the further we drift from the only place that void can really be filled within ourselves. And in today's world, this struggle is magnified. We live in a culture that constantly shouts, "You're not enough. You need more. Buy more. Achieve more. Show more." Every commercial, every feed, every highlight reel tells us that happiness is just one purchase or achievement away. No wonder so many of us feel lost. Think of how many people chase success, likes, followers, money, or recognition, yet inside they feel lonelier than ever. That's not coincidence. That's the spiritual void speaking. Now, Jung wasn't saying we should avoid pleasure or ambition, but he warned that if we expect those things to fill our inner emptiness, we're setting ourselves up for despair, because no matter how much we achieve, it will never be enough. So, what's the solution? For Jung, the answer wasn't running away. It was turning inward. He believed we must reconnect with our essence, the part of us that unites our conscious and unconscious self. Only by facing and integrating all of who we are, the light and the shadow, can we find real peace. Money, status, recognition, they may soothe us for a while, but the deeper hunger will always remain unless we reconnect with our true self. This is why many philosophies, from stoicism to mindfulness, insist that peace isn't found in what we collect, it's found in what we accept. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and stoic philosopher, wrote in his private journal, "Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In other words, stop looking out there. Start looking in here. So let me ask you, what have you been trying to use to fill your void? Is it work? Success, food, relationships? And what if none of those will ever be enough, because the only true answer has been inside you all along? That's the uncomfortable but liberating truth. The void doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're being called to reconnect with your essence, your meaning, your purpose. And here's the twist. Sometimes the void grows so loud that it forces us to wake up. It brings us to a breaking point where we either keep numbing ourselves or finally face the truth. That breaking point is exactly what happened to someone named Carlos. On the outside, he looked like he had a normal, decent life. Stable job, friends to hang out with, a routine that seemed fine. But inside, the void was slowly consuming him, and the way he tried to fill it nearly destroyed him. But what happened next might just change the way you see your own life. Carlos looked like an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He had a stable job, friends to meet on weekends, and a routine that most people would call normal. But what no one saw was the quiet war happening inside him. At first it seemed harmless, a quick stop for fast food after work, a beer in the evening to unwind, a small bet on soccer games every Sunday just for fun. Nothing dangerous, nothing unusual, but these little escapes grew roots. The burger after work became the daily ritual, the single beer turned into a bottle. The occasional bet became an obsession. Slowly his life started shrinking, his body grew tired, heavy, the spark in his eyes faded. Even surrounded by friends, he felt disconnected, like something essential was slipping away. And the strangest part, no matter how much he indulged, the emptiness never left. In fact, it grew louder. Work, which once gave him purpose, became a burden. Anxiety and irritability crept into his days. Relationships began to suffer. His friends noticed him withdrawing. His family worried, but didn't know how to reach him. Carlos was stuck in a vicious loop. The more he ran from his pain, the deeper the void became. And the deeper the void, the stronger his addictions gripped him. Until one night, after hours of drinking and gambling, Carlos stumbled into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize himself. His face was tired, worn, almost lifeless, and for the first time he admitted a truth he had been avoiding. I can't keep living like this. That moment of clarity shook him. But clarity alone doesn't heal. So Carlos went searching. And in that search, he discovered the writings of Jung. For the first time, things began to click. His addictions weren't just bad habits. They were signals, messages from his unconscious. Every drink, every gamble, every binge was a failed attempt to silence his shadow, to fill a spiritual void he didn't even know he had. The realization hit him. He wasn't running from life's problems. He was running from himself. And yet this realization also gave him hope. Because if addiction was a misguided search for meaning, then maybe he could redirect that search. Carlos also turned to stoic thinkers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. Their words echoed Jung's insights. Freedom comes not from escaping pain, but from facing it with courage and simplicity. He began to see that his true battle wasn't with alcohol, food, or gambling. It was with his own unwillingness to confront the void inside. So he began small. He cut back on drinking. He started planning his meals. And the hardest step of all, he stopped gambling. Each victory was fragile, but it mattered. Because each step wasn't just about breaking habits, it was about reclaiming pieces of himself. Still, the emptiness didn't vanish overnight. There were days when the void threatened to pull him back. But instead of numbing it, Carlos tried something new. He sat with it. He practiced meditation. He wrote down his fears and thoughts. He leaned on philosophy, on the very wisdom he had once ignored. And slowly, something shifted. The void that once consumed him began to reveal its secret. It wasn't a curse. It was a call to reconnect with his true self. Carlos simplified his life. He distanced himself from the temptations that once trapped him. He rebuilt relationships with his family and friends, and most importantly, he stopped hiding behind a mask of "I'm fine." For the first time, he felt free not because his life was perfect, but because he had the courage to face it as it was. Looking back, Carlos realized something powerful. The addictions he thought were destroying him had actually been pointing him toward transformation. Each escape, each failure, each night of despair was a clue leading him back to himself. And here's the truth for you. Your struggles, your compulsions, your addictions. They're not just chains. They might also be invitations. Invitations to stop running and start looking inward. Carlos's story proves it's possible. Even when you feel at your lowest, the journey back begins with one step. The decision to face yourself instead of numbing yourself. Because here's the secret Jung wanted us to know. Freedom doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from embracing it, understanding it, and transforming it into strength. And Carlos discovered that for himself. But his journey didn't end there, because Jung also believed in something deeper, the process of individuation. A journey of becoming whole, where you don't just escape addiction, you discover who you truly are. And that's where the real transformation begins. Carlos had broken some habits. He was drinking less, gambling, less, eating better. But if you had asked him whether he felt whole, he would have hesitated. And Jung would have smiled knowingly, because for Jung, breaking an addiction is not the final step. It's only the beginning. He believed in something far more powerful, individuation. Now, what does that mean? Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Not the mask you wear to please others, not the roles society pushes on you, not the escape routes you build through habits and addictions, but your authentic self, light and shadow, integrated into one. Jung argued that when we ignore or reject parts of ourselves, they don't disappear. They just go underground. They fester in the unconscious, and eventually they erupt often as destructive behavior. Think of it this way. Imagine locking parts of yourself in a dark basement. Fears, insecurities, past wounds, unmet desires. You slam the door thinking you've hidden them, but in the darkness they grow. And one day they come pounding on the door, breaking through as addictions, compulsions, or self-sabotage. That's why individuation matters. It's about opening the door, letting those hidden parts out and saying, yes, you belong too. Carlos began to see that his journey wasn't about killing his shadow, it was about integrating it. Every fear, every insecurity, every ugly thought he had repressed, they weren't enemies. They were parts of him that needed to be seen, understood, and redirected. For example, he realized his obsession with gambling wasn't just about money. It was about control. Deep down, he feared being powerless, once he recognized that the gambling lost its grip. Because the real issue wasn't the casino, it was the need for control he had been too afraid to admit. Individuation taught him something radical. When you bring your shadow into the light, it stops controlling you from the dark. And this is where most of us struggle. We spend our lives trying to look perfect, trying to be who we think we should be. But the more we pretend, the more pressure builds, until the mask cracks and addiction steps in to soothe the pain of living a lie. Carlos decided he was done with masks. He began writing daily journaling his darkest thoughts without censorship. He opened up in therapy. He admitted his flaws to close friends, no longer pretending to be fine. And with each act of honesty, he felt lighter. Was it easy? Absolutely not. Some days he wanted to run back to the bottle or the casino, but each time he remembered Jung's words, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that choice again and again was to embrace all of himself, not just the polished parts. The beauty of individuation is that it transforms what once felt like weakness into fuel for growth. Carlos's insecurities became motivation for self-improvement. His fear of failure became courage to try even when uncertain. His loneliness became a drive to build deeper, more authentic connections. This process wasn't about perfection. It was about wholeness. And in wholeness, addiction loses its power. Think about it for yourself. What parts of you have you been hiding? What fears, desires, or flaws have you locked in the basement of your mind? And what if facing them rather than burying them was the key to breaking free? Here's the irony. The very things you're most ashamed of may hold the exact lessons you need to grow. Your shadow, once integrated, can become your greatest strength. Carlos discovered this firsthand. By owning his imperfections, he stopped needing external approval. By admitting his fears, he stopped being controlled by them. By embracing his shadow, he found a freedom he never thought possible. That's the gift of individuation. It's not about escaping who you are. It's about becoming whole, so that even your darkness serves your light. And Jung went even further. He believed that symbols, those strange images that arise in dreams, myths and spiritual traditions, are the maps guiding us through this process. And when Carlos began exploring symbols, his transformation reached an even deeper level. Because symbols, Jung taught, are not just pictures. They are bridges connecting the conscious and the unconscious, the ordinary and the divine. And one symbol in particular changed everything for Carlos. Jung believed something that sounds almost mystical, yet makes profound psychological sense. Symbols are alive. Not just drawings, not just cultural icons, but living bridges between the conscious and the unconscious. Every time you dream, every time you're drawn to a myth, a story, or even a religious image, your psyche is speaking in symbols. And here's the powerful part. Jung believed many addictions are nothing more than failed attempts to answer those symbolic needs. When we don't listen to the language of our unconscious, we numb it. When we don't interpret the symbols, we reach for substitutes, alcohol, drugs, work, shopping, distractions. But if we dare to listen, if we dare to engage with symbols, they can guide us toward healing. Think of some of the images Jung explored: the cross, not just a religious object, but a universal symbol of suffering and transformation. The mandala, a circle representing wholeness, the integration of all parts of the self. Light, the timeless image of illumination, wisdom, and hope. The tree roots sinking deep into the earth, branches reaching toward the sky. Jung famously said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." In that one line, he captured the essence of overcoming addiction. You cannot rise without confronting your darkness. For Carlos, symbols became anchors in his journey. After hitting rock bottom, he began searching for meaning beyond quick fixes. One symbol in particular spoke to him: the hero's journey. The ancient archetype of a person who faces trials, descends into darkness, and returns transformed. He realized his story wasn't one of shame, but one of redemption. The nights of drinking, the losses from gambling, the loneliness, they weren't just failures. They were his dragons, his trials, his personal underworld. And like the heroes of myth, he had the chance to emerge stronger. The more he reflected on these symbols, the more his addictions lost their grip. Why? Because he was no longer trying to silence his pain. He was learning to decode it. Instead of reaching for a bottle when he felt empty, he meditated on the image of the mandala, reminding himself that his true goal wasn't escape, but wholeness. Instead of gambling for control, he saw the symbol of the tree, teaching him that real strength comes from grounding himself, not from chasing illusions. Symbols gave Carlos what his addictions never could: a sense of meaning. And with meaning, the void inside began to heal. This is the secret Jung discovered. Addictions aren't just about substances or behaviors. They are distorted quests for the sacred, for something that makes life feel worth living. Symbols redirect that quest. They give us a language to face our unconscious instead of numbing it. And here's the surprising part: you don't have to be religious or mystical to use them. Every culture, every tradition, every human being responds to symbols because they come from deep within us. They are part of what Jung called the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of images and patterns that shape the human experience. Think about it. Why do stories of heroes, dragons, and redemption move us no matter where we're from? Why do images of light and darkness, or trees with deep roots, speak across cultures and centuries? Because these symbols belong to all of us, and when you let them guide you, they can transform your struggles. Carlos discovered that his addictions weren't punishments, they were distorted pathways to meaning. By embracing symbols, he found a healthier road. The hero's journey wasn't just a story, it was his story. The mandala wasn't just a circle, it was a map of his inner healing. The tree wasn't just nature, it was a reminder that his strength came from facing his shadow. What about you? What symbols appear in your life through dreams, stories, or even random images you can't stop thinking about? What might they be trying to tell you? Because here's the truth. Your psyche is always speaking. The question is, are you listening? Carlos's life was never the same once he embraced this symbolic language. He no longer looked at his past as wasted years, but as chapters of a greater myth unfolding. And in that realization, his suffering turned into purpose. But there's one final piece Jung would want us to remember. Addiction, shadow, void, individuation symbols. These are not just abstract theories, they are lived experiences. And to truly heal, you must walk through them, which brings us to the closing reflections, the part where this story becomes your invitation. If you've made it this far, it already says something powerful about you. Most people turn away when conversations touch the darker corners of the mind. Addiction shadow, emptiness, fear. But you didn't. You stayed. And that means you're ready for transformation. When we began, you probably thought addiction was about alcohol or gambling or scrolling too much on your phone. But now you see what Jung saw: addiction is a signal. A sign of a soul searching for meaning, a shadow asking to be faced, a void demanding to be filled not with distractions, but with truth. So what do we do with this knowledge? First, we stop fighting symptoms and start listening to the message. If you're trapped in a destructive habit, ask yourself, what is this really covering? Is it fear, shame, loneliness, the hunger for purpose? Second, we dare to face our shadow. Write down the thoughts you usually bury. Admit the fears you pretend you don't have. Remember, what you hide controls you, but what you face loses its grip. Third, we explore the void, not as a curse, but as a calling. That emptiness isn't proof you're broken, it's proof you're human. It's an invitation to reconnect with your essence, to find meaning that no purchase or achievement can give. And finally, we let symbols guide us. The cross, the mandala, the light, the tree, whatever images arise in your dreams or resonate in your heart. These aren't just random pictures. They are messages from within, maps for your journey. Carlos discovered this. His life turned around not because he became perfect, but because he embraced his imperfection. He faced his addictions, accepted his shadow, reconnected with himself, and learned to see his life as part of a larger story. And if Carlos could do it, so can you. But here's the truth. The path isn't easy. Walking into your own darkness never is. It feels like stepping into a tunnel with no end in sight. But if you keep walking, if you trust the process, eventually you see the faint glow of light. One of my friends once described it like this: facing your shadows is like walking blind through a cave. You don't know when or if you'll find the exit. But eventually the darkness itself teaches you how to see. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now. Maybe the very struggles you hate are the doorway to the strength you've been searching for. So let me ask you directly, what are you running from? And what might happen if instead of running, you turn to face it? This is your invitation, not just to stop a habit, but to start a transformation. To use Jung's wisdom, not as abstract philosophy, but as a living tool for your life. If something in this journey resonated with you, pause for a moment. Reflect. What's one thing you've been numbing, avoiding, or denying? Write it down. Say it out loud. Share it if you're ready. Because naming it is the first step toward freedom. And I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, tell me, what part of this spoke to you the most? Your words might be the mirror someone else needs to see their own truth. As we close, remember this. You are not your addiction. You are not your shadow. You are not your void. You are the one who has the courage to face them. And in that courage lies your freedom. Carl Jung believed the answers we seek aren't out there. They've been inside us all along, waiting for us to stop running and start listening. So don't forget, you're stronger than you think, and your journey, like Carlos's, can become a story of redemption, meaning, and wholeness. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If this video spoke to you, share your reflections below. I truly want to hear your story, and if you'd like to continue exploring these ideas together, subscribe and join this community of seekers. Because this isn't just content, it's a movement. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can rise. Until next time, hold on to this truth. Your shadow is not your enemy. Your void is not your curse. They are the teachers leading you back home. And home has always been within you.